Women of Reddit. What was your worst run-in with a creep? When I was 12 and just starting to develop, a guy maybe in his late 20s told me, "Your titties are coming along nicely." I was so freaked out. I was about 10 and went to the local package store with my dad. The mail clerk said, "Ah, look at your cute little titties." My dad didn't say anything. My friend and I were 16 and wandering around at a Sephora in the mall, just swatching eyeshadow and highlighter on our wrists. He was the only guy in the store, and I only vaguely noticed him in the same aisle as us just before we paid. It didn't ring any alarm bells for me whatsoever, because why should it? We picked up our highlighter and went to pay. The girl at the register rung up our items, leaned over and said quietly, "That guy followed you two into the store and has been watching you in each aisle. I'm going to give you your bags, and go ask him if he needs any help. You two need to get as far away as possible. If you see him follow you outside of this store, go talk to security." She handed us our bags, gestured at the door, and walked up to him as we ran out. I hope she gets all the good things in this life. There was a guy in my hometown that would wait outside the high school, with the door to his Corvette open, hoping a girl would get in. I lived in the middle of nowhere. To get to my house I had to walk over a mile, on a one-lane dirt road, winding through a forest. One day as the school bus was approaching my laneway to drop me off, the Corvette guy was waiting in my laneway, with his door open. The bus driver wouldn't let me off the bus. He continued to the next drop and told me to go to that house and call my parents to pick me up. This was in the days before cell phones existed. In 5th grade, after ballet practice, I was only wearing shorts and a jacket over my dance clothes, leotard and tights, and standing in a Chipotle line. Some old dude was behind me and asking me about my phone. According to my mother, he was looking at my body, scanning it up and down. Even before I found that out, he gave me the creeps. When we left, he rushed to pick up his order and ran out the door after us and followed us home. He stopped following at the last turn. I had trouble sleeping. When I was 16 I went to Walmart with some of my siblings. I broke off to go look in the shoe section for some sandals, and as I turned a corner I almost ran into this guy. Very nondescript, wearing the jumper most guys who worked at the plants near there wore. For some reason I immediately got a really bad feeling, panicked, and turned around and went to the nearest other section. Took a few minutes to calm down enough to realize that it was the baby section and that I was staring at an infant bouncer for which I had no use. I laughed at myself, put it down to how anxious and socially awkward I was, and then turned around to go back to the shoe section. I then realized that guy was now in the baby section and that bad feeling came back. What were the odds he actually needed something there? I fled to the women's clothing section, thinking that there was no reason he would appear there. I was shaking, pretending to look at things and telling myself that I was being ridiculous, when he came up behind me and grabbed my behind so hard his fingers got places I wish they hadn't and whispered something in my ear. He immediately walked away. Before I could do anything, I listened to those bad feelings now. Frankly, I consider myself extremely lucky. I also really wish I could remember what he said, but everything was kind of roaring and went blurry. I was so panicked. Walmart has the worst creeps. My little cousin and I got followed by a man around the store. I was 16, she was 13. I took 4 left turns around the store after I noticed he was tailing us to find out he was following. Luckily a man at one of the checkout lines stopped him and started talking to him long enough for us to leave. Really sorry that happened to you. I unfortunately have a few stories, but this is one that tops the list. I'm a bartender and one night I was serving 3 men who work at an Italian restaurant nearby. I was offered a job, which I politely declined. They were my last patrons. I closed out their tab, finished my side work and had a busboy walk me to my car. As the busboy left in his own car, this black Porsche SUV blocks me in my spot. The window is rolled down and I realize it's the owner of the Italian restaurant. He asks if I want to go home with him. I decline. He asks if the busboy was my boyfriend and I lied and said yes. He scoffed and sped off. I hurry and leave to head home. As I pull into my parking spot at my house, I see the same SUV drive by. I woke up my neighbor who was a military guy, and he said he'd keep an eye out. That night I found the guy's name online, his Facebook profile, his business profile, his wife's profile and his phone number. I took screenshots and sent them all to him telling him not to harass me or I'll retaliate. I never heard from him again. Lesson learned. Always pay attention to your surroundings while driving home. The most memorable was when I was sitting in my parents' front garden, on the swing, reading. The way everything is laid out with the trees and whatnot, you can barely see the swing/deck/barbecue area from any perspective that's not from the front door. Very private spot. Anyway, I was just sitting there reading when I hear someone walking up. Assume it's a family member because how would it not be? Someone plops down on the swing next to me, throws an arm around me and it's just some peeping guy. Says some stuff, tries to move closer and proceeds to attempt to keep me from leaving when I get up. I GTFO up there. Practically sprint back to the house and tell my dad what just happened and that there's some asshole in our garden being completely gross at me. He just laughs and says, "Oh, that's just new across the street neighbor. Be nice." The peep? Over the next couple years, Speephead would go on to make me and my older, only occasionally visiting, sisters super uncomfortable any chance he got. Long stories. And his poor, but large and angry, dog was always loose in the neighborhood and murdering other people's pets. That mother peeper still makes my blood boil. Was walking down the sidewalk and a guy whistled at me from his car. I ignored him and kept waking. He revved his engine loudly and ran his car up on the sidewalk, missing me by a couple of feet. I was 12. I was walking my dog and made the mistake of not rushing home okay once it got dark. A man in a baseball cap and oversized jacket blocked my path to comment how pretty my dog was and how I must take good care of him. I smiled tightly and thanked him, told him to have a good day and nodded and went to go around him. So he naturally grabbed my arm and said, "Yeah, I bet you take real good care of anything you have. You married?" I lied and said yes. He let me go but followed me home. I wound up calling my boyfriend to come pick me up. Made eye contact with a guy across the street. Smiled at him to be polite. He followed me home without me realizing it and spent the next few days stalking me, following me when I left the house, leaving notes on my front door, etc. Had to get the cops involved. A guy saw me in the metro and thought I was cute, which meant he had to follow me on my 5 kilometers walk home to my flat in the middle of the night. He introduced himself to me as I was about to put in the key to my door. I was 21 in a strange city and got separated from my friend at a bar. I was drunk and wanted to go back to the hotel, so as I'm leaving, this guy who had been sitting near me all night followed and got in my cab with me and closed the door. Again, I was very drunk, so had to think quickly and stay as calm as possible. He tried to talk to me and I just nodded and made small talk. I didn't know if rejection would turn him violent, so I played along the best I could after telling the driver where to take me. The whole time this guy is moving closer and touching me. So as soon as the car stopped, I got out, ran into the hotel lobby where I knew this man would be following me, and screamed to the hotel security and desk employees, "I do not know this man. He is following me." And they took it from there. When I delivered pizzas and I was 18, this guy asked me if I wanted to step in while he grabbed his money. It was cold and rainy, so I took him up on the offer. He ended up trying to keep me there till his mom got home because he didn't have enough for the pizza. He tried to force me into a pyramid scheme and kept making uncomfortable comments about me. I had left my phone in my car, so I couldn't text my manager to call me to give me an out, because no matter how hard I tried to leave, this guy would find some way to block my path. I took off when he went to the bathroom and told my manager about what happened. Females weren't allowed to deliver to him anymore. We eventually found out he was a convicted sex offender too. Normally I find an out and I always have an escape plan. But I put myself in a position where I couldn't give myself an escape. I went on to manage/deliver pizzas for several years. But after that day I implemented a new rule, which was never enter anyone's home unless I knew who it was. I'd stand in the pouring rain any day over entering a stranger's home. I come from a safe, low crime area. But my gut instinct that night was that I was in danger. I am a male. And a customer I delivered to, also a male, got pretty creepy with me. The first time I delivered to him, he invited me in to put the pizzas down while he got his cash, and everything seemed totally normal. The second time I delivered food to him, he wasn't answering the door. I called the number on the slip and finally he came saying that he had fallen asleep cause he took Benadryl after getting bit by a spider. But he was really just trying to get my phone number on caller ID. I didn't go in that time, cause I had another order to deliver. But as I was walking back to my car, he asked if I could get him a pack of cigarettes. At some point on my travels he'd tip me another $10. That never happened. Then he called the store at the end of my shift and asked if I left a watch at his house. Then he'd call my phone with his number blocked. Say something like, "Hey, one of peep." Hang up. Then call with his number unblocked so my caller ID would get it. But he'd hang up once I answered. He did that a few times in the same day, so I called the cops. But finally called him back and told time to stop. I don't think he ever ordered food from our restaurant again.